Starting on, so what are the types of J1 waiver that's available? So to start with, J1 visa is a exchange visitor visa. That means you have to, after finishing your training, you got to go back to your home country for a period of 2 years. That is the inherent clause of J1 visa. In order to not have to do that, the United States government has a program wherein you work in an underserved area for a total of 3 years, and you have to work minimum of 40 hours per week, regardless of which agency you choose. And when you complete your 3 years, your requirement to immigrate into the US and stay within the US is complete. And after that, you will just follow your green card filing and your country-based, if there's backlogs, you're going to be backlogged. So the most common type of J1 waiver is the Conrad 30 program. So this was introduced in the 1990s by Senator Conrad from North Dakota, who had a lot of issues with hiring and retaining doctors in the state of North Dakota. So he brought in this program. It's a very detailed program, very, very successful program. Each year there's close to 1,000 to 1,200 people who get J1 waiver through this category. So what that basically would entitle is the same. You got to work for 3 years. You entitles 40 hours per week, excluding call and travel time. If you work 4 locations, you can count the time that you travel. And then each state, all of the 50 states get 30 spots each. And each of the state can determine how they want to give those 30 spots. So some states like California will predominantly focus on primary care applicants because that's where they feel they have a bigger need in the rural areas, versus some states like Montana gets to fill only 5 spots per year. So they're more flexible. Whoever comes to their state, they're able to accept the application as long as you meet certain criteria. Personally, for me, I'm a J1 waiver recipient through the Conrad 30 program for the state of Kansas. And I did this process in 2018 and 2019, where I interviewed in several states and went through this whole process. What I understood is one of the biggest limitations that Conrad 30 program has in different states is some states put in very specific requirements as far as the employer has to see certain number of Medicare, Medicaid, and uninsured patients, which can be difficult for private practices. Some states, they have to put in display somewhere in the hospital that Medicare and Medicaid patients and uninsured patients will be given a discount, which a lot of hospitals have issues with. Specifically, Arizona has that clause. So each state is different. We're not going to go into every single state, but again, some states that are of note, it would be California, which I said prefers primary care, and they only open specialist applications late into the year, somewhere May or June of almost your 3rd year if you're a resident. By then, they usually fill all their 30 spots with primary care. So they never usually had the need to give a specialist waiver spot, versus some states, as I said, Montana would take anybody. Florida has been a lottery for the last, I believe, 3 or 4 cycles. So there's no differentiation between primary care and specialist. So everybody submits application. Usually they get about 60 applications, and every 1 in 2 gets. So your odds are 1:2. And you can be a primary care or you can be a specialist. All of you have equal odds. More recently, Connecticut moved to lottery since 2019 cycle. They made a very abrupt change in September of that year, 1 month before they were going to start accepting applications. And that happened because some 3 or 4 major employers ended up taking the whole Conrad 30 spots, all the 30 spots, by making someone stand in the queue for like 2 days or 1 day before the application cycle. And many other employers started complaining. So that's why it became a lottery system. Now, some of the other states in this 2020 cycle got like 40, 45 applications, like Missouri, Minnesota. There is high probability that these states could move into lottery because there's too much vetting going on. They have to choose the 30 spots. They have their own criteria, and there's the board that sits and approves these 30 applicants. And in order to make it simplified, there may be a possibility that more competitive states can move to lottery, but for now it's only 2. But I would closely follow these more competitive states like Minnesota, Missouri, New York, Iowa, Wisconsin, Georgia. These states might move into lottery in the near future. So I would check with their health department if you're interested in these states. Also, some of the states have some specific requirements like prevailing wage determination. Now, prevailing wage is basically to make sure that you are being paid what's the prevailing wage for that particular specialty in that area. Very few states have it. For me, in Kansas, we didn't have that, so I'm not sure which exact states have it, so you might have to review their own documents. By the way, every state has their own J1 waiver page and documents that details all of this. So if you're interested in a particular state, spend some time, takes 10-15 minutes, go through the whole page, and it'll tell you the steps involved, what sort of documents are needed, and so forth. And also, and some places need a community support letter, like the city or the county health department has to give a letter that this specialty has a high need. The hospital will get letters from other specialties working in the hospital that I have trouble sending patients to gastroenterology because there's a 4-month wait and we are in dire need, so forth. So each state, again, is very dependent on that. So you might have to follow through on those recommendations. Make sure wherever you're signing your contract, you meet all those criteria. Very few states also have the requirement that 6 months of recruitment is needed, and you should submit proofs before someone's application can be accepted for waiver. I see a lot of people asking specific questions about different states. We are not going to be able to address all those individual state-based questions. Sorry about that. So moving on, also some states have specific limitations on how many flex waiver spots can be given. So what is flex? Flex is basically the Contact 30 program, the work location has to be physically located in an underserved area. You can Google that and it can find it in HPSA find. You can Google it and it has a place where you can put HPSA by address. You put the address of the location where you will be potentially working and it will tell you if it's an underserved area or not. However, if you want to find the specific score of that area, which might be important in some states like Texas and other places, you'll have to go through a more detailed process. Again, you have to just play around with the HPSA website and you can find you can find the score, the MUA score and the HPSA score. The HPSA score goes from 0 to 26. 26, if someone has a 26 score, that means they have a dire need. Some 0 means that there's no need. And there's also medically underserved area or medically underserved population score that goes from 0 to 100. The lower the score, the better for MUA. The higher the score, that's better for HPSA. So that's just the gist of it. And then, okay, the second pathway is HHS pathway, which is primarily only for primary care specialties, internal medicine, pediatrics, OB-GYN, psychiatry, for family medicine. So only these 5 specialties are included in this pathway. Now, in the past, HHS was only in federally qualified health centers, which are basically like a county health department or a nonprofit organization that predominantly caters to underserved people without insurance, Medicare and Medicaid population. Just this past month, there's been a change in that HHS pathway will now start accepting applicants even in employers who are not federally qualified health centers, but physically located in an area which has a HPSA score of 7 or greater. So that's important. So you can check the score of a potential employer you're interested in, and if it's above 7 and you are interested in a primary care specialties, you can talk to them about filing under the HHS pathway, which just got the approval within the last month. Now, there's no cap for that. There's no timeline for that. So you can submit your application in June or July or even December and don't have to worry about whether you will be part of the 30 spots for that state. Moving on, Delta Regional Authority. Again, Delta Regional Authority has a web page. There's a map of all the counties that are included. It has, I believe there's 8 or 9 states that along the Mississippi, starting at southern Missouri and Illinois, it goes all the way to Louisiana and Mississippi, Alabama, all of that is included. Now, Delta Regional Authority does not have a timeline, so you can submit your applications at any time. Each of the state has a state coordinator who is the main contact person where your application will be sent. Your job has to be physically located in one of those counties that fall under Delta Regional, or can be a flex waiver which is not very clearly listed in their website, but employers do know a way of getting that around, where if they show a percentage of population that they cater comes from certain counties under DRA, they can still do Delta Regional. So this is something that employers like in that area, because there's no timeline. They don't have to worry about application getting rejected. As long as they submit all the required documents, you can get through. So for the year 2018, Delta Regional processed 162 applications. Alabama had 40, Illinois had 34, Louisiana had 25, Mississippi had 31, Missouri had 17, and Tennessee had 15. So a total of 162. This is for 2018. They didn't publish the 2019 data yet, so I'm not sure. Remember, Delta Regional also has a 250,000 penalty if you do not complete your 3-year waiver there. However, it's prorated, so it's 250,000 by 36. So for every month, 1 by 36 of that 250,000 will be forgiven. So as long as you finish it at the end of 3 years, all that 250,000 is forgiven. Now you can move from one employer to another employer within the Delta Regional Authority, and you won't have to pay any money. But if you move out of the Delta Regional area, and there might be case-to-case exceptions, but this is something that is under the contract under Delta Regional, is you have to finish your 3 years there. But there is a prorated fee reduction as long as you finish your 3 years. And then there's also a requirement that they should do recruitment up until 60 days before your application cycle. In the sense, if you're filing your application on July 1st, they still have to continue to recruit people in May and June. So your contract can be signed in April and they file in July and they stop recruiting. They should show evidence of continued recruitment. Next one is the Appalachian Regional Commission. It has 13 states. Again, it has its own website, and there's a map of all the different counties that come along it. It's basically the Appalachian mountain range on either side of it, the counties which are under this agency. So they need a 6-month recruitment effort proof. So some of the employers has to prove that they filed application for an opening in different sites, paper, and all that for a period of 6 months. They have a 250,000 liquidated damage clause, and that's very that's strict. There's no prorating in that, so you have to finish those 3-year requirement within ARC region. So you can move from one employer to another employer within ARC region, but you have to stay there for 3 years. But traditionally, the issue with ARC has been that they've been very slow because they rely on the respective state health departments to give them the support letters, and also the state health department has to authorize the job location and so forth. Some of the states like New York get a lot of such applications, so they usually get very slow. And then the the Appalachian Regional has to process that application and then finally send it to Department of State. The usual complaint is that it's slow. But Delta Regional can do both primary care and subspecialty. Appalachian used to be just primary care for a long time, until recently, a couple years ago. Some states like New York have allowed specialist applications. Again, it's very state dependent, but the agency is Delta Regional. And then the next one is the Veterans Affairs. Veterans Affairs is unique in that they have a whole different set of requirements compared to others. So for VA, I've tried a VA job, and so this is the requirement. So they can't start your process until 6 months before your start date. So basically, if you're finishing fellowship or residency in June 30 and you want to start on July 1st, they can only start your process on January 1st of this year, of that particular year. And then they can't give you a contract. They still have to try to hire a US citizen. They have to show that they were unable to hire one, and then they have to file through the VA system, which paperwork is usually very slow to move within VA. And then they don't pay for the attorney fees. They don't file green card, so you have to spend for all of that. But it's kind of attractive that you can work in academic centers within, in a city-based places that might be difficult through the Conrad 30 program. And VA has its own merits of there's no malpractice. You have good retirement benefits. You have a very fixed schedule. Usually, most of the time, you will have residents or fellows in your department, so it will qualify as an academic job. In the past, VA used to have a pathway where you can do a part of it in the VA and part of it in the university, but more recently I'm hearing that they're frowning upon it. So if personally for me, VA waiver would be the last because of all the costs associated with that, and also the paperwork and the proof needed. And there's not a lot of things you can do, work compared to working with the private employers who will be pretty responsive to your paperwork and everything. With the VA, it's difficult to get stuff done, if you're in a very tight, short window frame. For me, the biggest issue is I have to leave all the other jobs, wait until January 1st of my last year of training, and I would still won't have a contract. And for me, that's just very risky in the sense that if they do get a qualified American candidate, they can say no in March, and so you'll have only 3 months left to find another job. So personally, for me, VA is probably not a best option. And then last but not least, then there's the hardship waiver. So hardship waiver basically means that you do not have to do this 3 years of waiver. You're working in underserved and so forth, as long as you have an exceptional need or hardship in leaving this country and going back to your home country. It could be like there's a war in your home country. It could be that you or your wife or your children have some medical issues that need a lot of specialists that need treatment in US. And then being away from the family, or your family will be separated. Your kid is born in US, you move to India, it will be difficult for them. So there are certain criteria. I don't do hardship waivers. I'm not a legal expert. You should talk to someone with experience in that. But just remember, it takes 18 months, 16 to 18 months for that application to process. So you should be starting, for someone finishing in 2021 June, it's probably too late to start an application now, unless you can qualify on an O1 visa and start working after June, which is possible. But again, just remember the timeline. So federal agencies like HHS cannot do flex waiver. And then the last option again is something that very few people do, is just go back to your home country and just work in your home country for 2 years. So that is the inherent J1 clause. So you can just go back to your home country and actually work in home country. Some of them have asked, okay, I'm from India or Pakistan or Middle East, can I go to Canada and work for 2 years and then come back? Will that qualify as 2-year home country? And the answer is no, unless you're a citizen of Canada. So you do have to prove that you've country. So you need some proof of employment that you worked in your country majority of the time, and you should have proof. You can still come to US to visit friends, family, or have a conference that you want to attend on a B1, B2 visa, but you can't work in US. You have to work in your home country. And then after 2 years, you will come back on a H1B visa, and then your employer can file a green card for you, and you can work as regular H1. Any job that qualifies for H1, you should be able to qualify for that at that